Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season finale of Citadel. A great season finale. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Okay, so first and foremost, we're picking up in the aftermath of the last episode. Mason, Carter, and Nadia are going to have to retrieve these cores from these nuclear warheads that are on a Russian submarine that's automated. Which I'm like, I guess that's the whole spy element of it, is to sneak on the ship, give yourself sneak onto the sub, give yourself authorization so that it doesn't recognize, like, hey, there's someone that's not supposed to be here. You just keep the system looping, like, oh, everything's hunky-dory, don't even notice that the sub went up. It's so interesting, because it's like, I was about to say, you would assume you'd have cameras on there, because because obviously Russia never found out about the Red Cell mission all those years ago, where Mason ended up getting access to those missiles, because obviously this is sometime after Nadia left, and Mason is just drowning and just regrets about how everything played out, that everything he did was for Nadia. And I think it also plays into his psyche as his character, because once again, he talks about, and a big focus of this episode is restating that line of, yes, he lost his dad when he was 5, his mom left, and he was someone that was a ghost. He was never seen, and it made him a great spy. But for the first time in forever, he felt like he was finally seen by someone, by Nadia. She had filled a hole that had been in his heart for the past 30-ish years. And so that's why he's so obsessed with her, because I think you could make the argument, because Mason was kind of messed up from a young age, like his way of like showing love and the way he goes about it, like he doesn't go about it the way he's supposed to, because I think you can make the argument he's not mentally and emotionally, like, when he latched on to Nadia, he's willing to do whatever it takes, like, in a very, I think you'd almost make the argument in a very psychopathic sense, the way he went about the whole thing with Celeste, trying to protect Nadia. I think you can make an argument there's a little psychopathy there. The fact is that, but I guess it's like you can make the argument that's also what makes him a good spy, but it's just like he's damaged and he's broken in a certain way, and that's why he latched onto Nadia, but his brokenness ended up kind of breaking what was building between them, so. And he's still unaware of what he did, because he's asking Nadia, like, why didn't I deserve to know about Asha, about our daughter? And she's like, now is not the time. You need to focus on the jump. Nadia wanted to be the one to do it, because it's like, right, he's Kyle right now. He's not Mason Kane. He can't do this. Mason Kane could do the jump easily, but Kyle isn't trained for this. But it's like, right, all the biometrics and stuff like that are set to him. He's the only one that can unlock it. That's why Dahlia needed him to be the one to do it. Well, I guess maybe in the grand scheme of things, we'll talk about it later, but maybe that's why Dahlia knew in advance, like, because maybe they knew because I was about to say, they must have already snuck aboard the submarine beforehand to know exactly where they were, and then found out about that. I was about to say, I thought that might correlate about the reveal we get later on in the episode. Like I said, we'll get to that soon enough, but I just want to kind of break things down leading up to that. But, it has to be Mason. So he does it. He's not going alone. He's going with Davik, which I completely forgot about last episode, where Dahlia lied and said, like, oh yeah, like, Bernard's the one that he ended up getting free and shooting and killing your brother, which Dalek knew that was BS. I guess he can kind of tell. I guess the way Dahlia talked, it's like you probably pick up those cues of like, oh, you're lying to me. I can tell. Like, I guess he has and I guess he always keeps his guard up. I guess he also knows like who him and his brother got in business with. We can't never fully trust you. So you're saying something like that. It's like there's no way like Bernard will just like be able to get free without you knowing. So it's like you're lying to me. So maybe that's just because, once again, he's the one that also sniffed out Celeste when she was undercover. So that's why I'm like, I guess he's very good at sniffing out liars, potentially, just having some inkling. But when they get on the sub, he ends up like trying to kill Mason, and he tries to hijack the whole situation. It's like, cool, I've got these missiles, these warheads aimed at all these different Manticore family homes of the family scattered across the world. But she's like, oh no, go ahead and do that. We have control of that sub. We'll drag it flip it upside down to the very bottom of the ocean, and then those weapons will go off, and you'll end up dying in the process. You traitorous bastard. It's like, yeah, that blew up in your face. I mean, it's like, right, she's willing to sacrifice your brother because he was the love-sick puppy that he was. She's willing to put him down need be. She's willing to do the same to you. I mean, fortunately for her, but also unfortunately for you, like, she was willing to do it, but she didn't have to. Mason ended up being the one. Despite, like, Kyle isn't ready, because Kyle hasn't really had too many, like, hand-to-hand combat situations. He had the one when he was sneaking into that building for Bernard in episode 2, but that's about it. Was that episode 2? I think that was episode 2. What? Yes, I believe, if I remember correctly. Anyway, but that's the only hand-to-hand combat. Every other situation was kind of like his previous encounter was like a couple, like 2 episodes ago, and that was like gun situation. So, was kind of able to kind of deal with things long distance wise. So this is like his first, like, because like he went up against, I don't remember if that was Davik or Anders. Might have been Anders, but it's like, got his ass handed to him in episode 2 by him. Like, that didn't go well. Nadia had to be the one to kind of kick his ass after getting her memory back. So there's that. Speaking of Nadia, maybe this will never be important. We still never really found out what she did in like that 8 years. I guess it's not significant. I mean, obviously, there is major significance to Mason's circumstances of how funny it is that out of anyone, he would end up with Celeste, Abby. So that makes their stories heavily significant in that regard. But, like, we have not paid any attention to what Nadia's done in those 8 years. And I guess the only significance is those are 8 years she spent away from her daughter, so. Either way, Davik, super dead. I thought that whole scene was kind of wild, where Nadia basically had to raise her body temperature to like 106, so that basically it matched the temperature of the room, because if the room detects any like temperature lower than that, then it will automatically shut down and kind of lock you out from trying to get the warheads. And it's like, obviously, like, your body like heating up for that long will eventually make you pass out because it takes its toll on your body. Like, the nerd in me is almost like, oh yeah, it's kind of like Luffy's Gear Second, how like that would like take a toll on his body when he first started using it, because it was when he first started creating that technique. Obviously, he got rid of that like hindrance and that backlash from it after the time skip. But it made me think of that. If you're curious, I was referencing One Piece. It's a technique by one of the main protagonists of the series. But either way, so it kind of reminded me of that. Like, right, your body is pumping so much blood, it's like it's raising your temperature, but it's taking a toll on your body, because your body, it's literally boiling on the inside because of it. So I'd almost halfway expected Davik to still be up and attack them one more time, but it's like, nah, he was super dead. So it's like, hey, the mission was a success. Now it's immediately like, hey, let's go. Which really quickly, funny situation on the plane and everything. I love that Nadia immediately like kills everyone. Carter's there on the computer and just so super calm's like, you realize that was a pilot, right? She's like, well, this baby can fly itself, right? And he's like, don't worry, I got it, go. I'm like, you were super calm about like just a gunfire. I guess it's like, that's his spyhood for you. But I love that it's just like, you just killed a pilot, It's like, whatever. This place, I just love the nonchalantness of it. So, but obviously it came down to the exchange. I think that's so interesting that Kristoff would show up herself. It feels like that's something she had goons with her, but I'm like, why would someone from one of the families show up? Maybe she's not. I thought she was like one of the family, but maybe she's a middle person like Dahlia. Maybe she's kind of higher up, whereas like you're kind of on the lower end of the totem pole when it comes to the middle, like being a middle person. Maybe Kristoff is, but I thought she was like one of the families. Now it's probably just an assumption on my part last episode. She probably isn't. She probably is just like a middle person like Dahlia. She just happens to be like, maybe she specifically, no, because she referenced all the families. So I was about to say she might be a mediator for all the families. It's like, Dahlia's the middleman in the regards of, oh, you go off and get stuff done. I'm the middleman in that I am their representative. I'm their liaison. You're not. You're just like the hired gun almost, essentially. You're the hired gun that hires the other hired guns type of thing. Maybe that's what that really is. Like I said, because I was like, why would someone one of the family show up? It's like, well, she wouldn't if she's not one of the family. So like I said, that was just a misconception on my part. I'm surprised that whole situation went down as smoothly as it did, but it's like, hey, you got Asha, which obviously her grandpa made sure to show her what her mom looks like. Nadia made the whole point of not wanting Mason to be a part of her child's life, so it's like, right, she has no idea who Mason is, so it's just like, oh, it's some random dude, but it's like, oh, I recognize you, Mom, like, even though you haven't been in my life for these past 8 years, her grandfather always made sure she knew who her mom was. So I thought it'd be a thing of like, oh, I don't recognize you. It's like, still like, hey, you've been absent from my life, but it's like, at least she had a grandfather to probably tell her about her mom. And it's like, right, she'll find her way to you because she's super tough. Because she was saying like, right, your grandfather's okay. I don't know whatever they did with him, but he's the toughest person I know. And she said, Grandpa said the same thing about you. So all the while this is happening, we're kind of bouncing back and forth between that Red Cell mission all those years ago, specifically Mason holding those warheads hostage. It's like, yeah, like it's set to my biometrics. So you, Grace, have to tell me where Nadia is. It's like, oh, she's in Berlin. It's like, that is what I think is so interesting. Why did Grace like placate that? Like, why did she even lie? Like, why she could have been, I guess it's like, right, there's no way Citadel doesn't know where one of its tier 1 agents are. Like, you don't go off the grid without them knowing, but she kept being like, oh, she's in Berlin. But like, why would you lie? Like, did Nadia, I'm trying to think, like, because they had talked about it before about like, what was she going to do? Like, maybe she has enough dirt and secrets on Citadel that they don't want to take the chance to piss her off, because they're like, yeah, if we do that, maybe Nadia informed Grace about what it was, and that might still go with the whole, she didn't want Mason to know, because Grace is like, right, Nadia's gone, you need to talk to somebody because you already lost her, but you'll lose yourself, which is ironic considering he's not even himself, that that's the deeper level of irony, because Mason Kane isn't who he really is. That's just a persona he created. He became this person to become like, hey, this top class spy, because it's his way to kind of deal with his trauma. He left behind who he was, then loses all his memories and becomes Kyle. And now it's like Kyle's doing everything he can to become Mason, who Mason isn't even the real you in the first place. So it's like there's layers to the massive identity crisis that is that character. They return to Citadel and eventually meet up with Abby and, well, present day, they meet up with Abby and Hendrix at Citadel. I don't know if Joe just like dropped them off, because they didn't. She could have been there in a scene, but we just never saw her. But dropped her off because it's like, well, they still have no idea where Bernard is. Obviously, they're not going to kill him. He's too useful as one of the few Citadel agents left remaining. Plus, all the secrets in his head that probably Nadia and Mason probably don't know. But what I thought was so interesting is, going back to the past stuff, Mason did know about Nadia and Asha, which I was like, whoa. So you knew even before the Italy job. So I'm like, that's interesting. She thought he didn't know. It's like, oh, Mason lost his memories and now he'll never know. Like, he never knew about his orders. Like, no, he found out because Bernard told her. But then even then it's like, wait, Bernard's like, yeah, you knew she was in Spain. How'd you know that? I was like, wait, how did you know? At first I was like, because, like, once again, I don't remember if we ever found out who was sending him those messages. Once again, he got sent a message being like, yo, it seemed like it was like saying Celeste, but it was really saying Nadia was the one behind everything. Then Nadia got a message talking about, go to Bernard about what happened to Celeste. And now it's like, he knows exactly where Nadia is. I'm like, what was that about? Like, was that kind of a lone con jumping ahead a little bit on the Manticore side of things? Or what was that? Because that just seemed like that was so out of nowhere. We never found out, like, who was sending those messages. It was like encrypted messages that were sent to both of them, kind of revealing, like, what the other was up to. I don't know. But I do love the parallel of, right, hey, here's a backup of all your memories, Mason, which obviously Carter and Nadia had quite the shock when they saw Abby being like, how is it that he ended up with her? It's like, once again, that can't be an accident. That had to be on purpose. It's like these two Citadel agents who don't have memories happen to be around each other. I mean, come on. Nadia managed to never run into Mason in all that time. And it's like, right, Mason, who took away Celeste's memories, just happens to lose his memory and they happen to find you. Like, that is too coincidental. It feels like that was too on purpose. So it feels like there's still some thread that we haven't even really tugged on at all over the course of the show so far. Maybe, once again, maybe I'm just reading too much into it, but it feels too purposeful. But either way, there is a backup, because I guess there's a backup of everyone's memories except for Celeste. I don't know, maybe Bernard actually kept a secret backup that he just never let Mason know about. Who knows? But it's like, hey, here's a backup of your memories. So it is like a one vial thing of like, yeah, this is all there is. But it's like, luckily, all backstop stuff was backed up as well. So it's like, cool. There might have been another copy of Nadia's just in case too. I guess like all those years ago, Bernard was like, yo, make some copies just in case. So, hey, there was some backup. I can now restore your memory. And just then, like, just as Mason's remembering everything, we find out the truth. He never went to find Nadia, because he was like, what am I supposed to do? Like, go and try and force myself to be in that child's life? It's like, yes, you fight for your family. You fight to be have a right to be the father's child, the child's father, father's child. Jesus. But he never did, because I guess it was just like, I don't think it was a pride thing. I think it was just for him. It's like, I don't know if he just didn't want to go about it that way, or... Well, because he references it, like, I think because it's all connected, but I think that I'm so stupid. Because that's what was confusing me. Like, this ties back into what I was bringing up earlier. That still doesn't answer some of those questions. I still think those are valid questions about those messages. But now I'm like, okay, the meeting with Dahlia took place before he went and saw... Bernard. Because I kept thinking those scenes were like, the way they played out in the episode, I thought that was the order they were in, but it's not. The Dahlia scene took place, because I was like, right. Because it's like, yeah, we never found out how he knew she was in Spain. Once again, I was thinking like it was some message, just like, no, it had to be his, him meeting with Dahlia. It's how... I'm about to say, like, could that scene be even older than we think it is? But it's like, no, that definitely took place like 8 years ago, so it is well after the fact. But it's just the way the scenes played out. It was just because of that, it confused me. So it's like, no, that's how he knew about her being in Spain, is because of Dahlia. The moment he sat down with her, and the moment she said the line of, "You look just like him," I was like, shut up! Dahlia's his mom. Like, for whatever reason, early on in the episode, I was like, oh, it'd be interesting. Like, we're going to find out Dahlia's his mom. I was like, no, I'm being stupid. I don't even remember what it was. Something made that fleeting thought fly into my head of like, are we going to find out Dahlia's his mom or something like that? Like, she's got to be someone significant. But then I like kind of brush it off. Like I said, I don't remember what it was, but this was at the beginning of the episode I was thinking that. And it was like, holy crap, it ends up being the case. I don't remember what made me think that at the beginning, but whatever, I just pushed it out of my head and it ends up being the case. It's like, that's so interesting. Now it also explains a lot of things. Because like the moment he talked to her, like the familiarity of like, I was like, oh, you don't know about her being Manticore, because he's like, oh yeah, you're on TV and stuff. I'm like, and then she's asking about this information about Citadel. I was like, you were casually going to give it to her. And she was like, yeah, we're going to report it to like the government to get them involved. And I was like, he doesn't know you're Manticore. And now it's like, the big question is, when did that happen? Were you always Manticore? Are you kind of a legacy in Manticore? Or was it after what happened to Thomas that you ended up switching? Because we know Bernard and Dahlia knew each other from like the UN days when she used to work at the UN or wativer, or something of that sort. They have a past, but I guess like maybe it's while he was with Citadel and she was with Manticore, but they were kind of... It made it sound like it was kind of before her Manticore days too, or maybe it was just like before he found out she was a part of Manticore. But now it's like, well, he didn't know about Mason being her son, and it's like, well, she did leave 30 years ago, and Mason did reinvent himself, so he doesn't even have the Because we never actually found out what I doubt Mason's his actual name, but he probably cut ties with all of his past because he was watching that movie of someone getting plastic surgery and becoming someone else. And it was his way to, get away from his pain and find, like, it's like, right, I'm not seen regardless, so I'm going to live my life as a ghost. As a ghost, I can be whoever I want to be. I get to reinvent myself. But either way, I even love that they play into it by making, because like it is so weird here. Because I'm trying to remember, it's because I've not seen Eternals since probably like a little after it came out. Like, because I've only seen it once so far, and that was when it was in theaters. I'm trying to remember, as Icarus, did Richard Madden use his natural accent or not? Because I know one of the things he's best known for is like Game of Thrones, but I've never seen Game of Thrones, and I've been to watch it, but I've never watched The Bodyguard, and I have heard a little bit here and there. So, but it's just like I was like, I don't think he had an American accent in Eternals. I don't think he did. Maybe he did. I legitimately don't remember, because it's so weird. Because I'm like, I believe he's British, if I remember correctly. I believe he is. But I was like, yeah, because I know that's not your natural accent. But then he flips into the Queen's English, and I was like, and she's like, yeah, I thought it was gone, and he was like, no, I just buried it. And she's like, no, you don't bury the Queen's English or whatever, something like that. It never kind of leaves you or something like that. She said, because for her, it's like, for him, it's like, I'm finally. It makes you wonder, did he always know who she was, and was this the first time he ever contacted her in all those years? Like, because this was like 22 years later, and is that the first time contacted her in all that time? Because maybe for him, it's like he cut ties with her, being like, I want nothing to do with her. She wants nothing to do with me. Fine, I'll have nothing to do with her. But, we find out what her issue with Citadel is. It goes back to like the Thomas thing, because Citadel killed her husband. They were trying to stop a terrorist group in Serbia, but they ended up getting the wrong coordinates and ended up hitting a place, killed 157 people, men, women, children, infants, some of them UN workers and stuff like that. So that's why her hand is the way it is, because her husband literally burned to death. Thomas burned to death because of it. Her hand, like, basically they took different parts of her skin trying to, like, basically patch her together. And for her, it's like, when I came out on the other side of it, I was a different person. I'd lost the man that I love. I kind of lost myself and my identity. That's why I never came back home, because it wasn't home anymore. I wasn't that same person anymore. Which now it's like, it's interesting that what happened to her would turn her into making herself into someone else, and Mason's exactly the same way. So it's just like that, how much that event influenced and changed both of them into let's reinvent ourselves. Because even she was just like, I never expected you to kind of abandon all that you were. But even he's like, yeah, but didn't you just do the exact same thing? It's like, it is ironic for her to not recognize how ironic it is that she kind of reinvented herself and became a different person. But maybe on some level she thought like, I may have felt like a different person, but I still maintained enough of who I am, where she feels like for Mason, it's like, you completely disemboweled everything that you were. Like, at least she's like, hey, at least I still have the Queen's English in my mouth. It's like, you put on a whole new accent. You completely reinvented to yourself, which is now kind of even, it makes that whole Nadia thing even wilder, where he's like, oh, like, I see you and I feel seen by you. And it's like, well, how can she really ever see you when even she doesn't even really know the real you? Because maybe that's also always, maybe that's you projecting, where you're talking about she's putting on all these different masks. And it's like, the mask, the face you're wearing right now isn't even really yours. It's a mask you've put on for so long. I mean, who knows what other mask he had put on, but maybe he thinks, little by little, you starting to see my mask slip, and you're now seeing me fully for who I am, but you're still wearing your mask and hiding for whatever reason. But yeah, Dahlia convinced it, Mason is like, right, your father died because of Citadel. They blackmailed and they covered up stuff, never acknowledging what they did. We should expose him. And that's what Mason was trying to do. He was trying to expose him for what they did, what they took from him, because that was, once again, maybe if that had never happened, who knows who Mason would be right now, what life he would have led. He still would have, he would have had his dad, he would have had his mom, she would have never become someone else, he would have never become someone else. So it's like, you literally, in his mind, Dahlia's words made him, like, especially at a moment where he's so vulnerable, where it's like, right, I'm looking for my wife, she, you know, and that's also why at the time he didn't mention the thing about the daughter, because once again, like I said, the Bernard scene happened afterwards. That's when he found out about Asha, and maybe his feelings towards Citadel, and just like, right, maybe she was right about me, maybe she's right to get out and get away. So still ended up going on that mission to track her down, because I guess eventually what Bernard said all that time, like at that time, eventually weighed on. So it's like, no, I gotta go see her. I gotta confront her about this whole child thing. Or maybe he probably didn't want to like confront her about it. He was probably waiting for her. It's like, no, I need you to tell me, you know? Because it's like, I don't want to like be like, hey, I found out about this. It's like, no, I want you to be able to tell me when you're ready and when you're comfortable, and that, because that means you're okay with me being in our daughter's life. So. But yeah, like I said, he had no idea his mom was Manticore, and that she was going to use what she did to burn Citadel to the ground. And I don't even know at that time, when it's like, oh, someone betrayed Citadel, I don't know if it even fully clicked in his mind. Maybe then it did click of like, my mom, but by then, like, he immediately got, like, the explosion on the train happened, and he and Nadia got backstopped. So it wouldn't matter if he figured it out at that moment, but now he has connected the dots now that he's got his memories back. It is interesting, because that means, like, she knows, because she's known that was her granddaughter, but I guess it's like, right, this fight is so much bigger. I mean, she was still willing to let everything go down the way it did on the train, like everything with her. It's like, no, you were willing to, like, think your son was dead all this time, because, like, hey, sacrifices have to be made for the greater good, for the truth to, like, reign, because Citadel, it represents nothing but liars and murderers and terrorists in their own right, you know? They took from me, and I don't even know if it's a thing of you truly do believe that Manticore is the only way forward, that it is really all about truth, where you fully indoctrinated because of all your hate for what Citadel did, or is it just a situation of, yes, you recognize them as evil, but you're willing to take their evil over Citadel, because Citadel's the one that burns you, both metaphorically in the grand scheme of things, but also literally. So you take the lesser of the evil as Manticore. Like I said, I'm so curious if she's just that much of a cult believer in them and their cause. Obviously, all this rushing back was a lot for Mason to handle, and so he went off on his own, and Nadia watches from, like, the other side of the, because he ended up going into one of the old interrogation rooms, which I think is kind of I didn't even think about it until just now, of like, oh yeah, like how Abby followed him in there, and it's like, right, it's, like 10 to 9 years apart, but it's like, we were just in this situation all those years ago, her watching you interrogate her, and she's asking, like, are you okay? Do you remember? And he's like, I don't know. Now, I don't know whether Nadia's like, okay, he's lying to her because he doesn't want to tell her the truth because he remembers what he did, or whether she's not, because there's no way they're like, oh, the memory thing didn't work. It's like, no, he remembers things, and she's like, right, he's probably having a hard time with the realization of what he did and who Abby is, so having those memories, and once again, now, like, knowing what Citadel did, but also now remembering what he did, that he's the one that got so many people killed, regardless of his reasonings, regardless of he didn't know his mom being who she was, it changes a lot. She's also kind of faked her death, blew up her home just for the purpose of, because she knew that the families were going to come after her for her failure in this regard. So it's like, right, they can't do anything to you, to the dead. So she faked her death. So who knows where she's kind of going off. Once again, Bernard is still kind of a piece to the puzzle. So now the question is, now that Mason has his memories back, what is he going to do? Knowing the truth, like, that's going to complicate things between you and Celeste. It's going to, Abby, and it's going to complicate things. Well, because it's also like, is there, like, any possibility, once again, that there's at least a backup of Celeste? Or is she just always going to be Abby, and he's going to have this heart? Like, it's a truth that him, Carter, and Nadia are sitting on. Then there's also the whole thing of like, also, yeah, this woman who's been helping me out that you were thankful for. Yeah, we used to be an item, and that's my daughter over there too. So Hendrix has a half sister that neither of us knew about. What actually I knew about years ago, but Nadia didn't know that I knew. So that's a whole thing. So it's going to be wild to see what happens next. The show was renewed for a second season, which I'm very excited about. I've seen that, obviously, the show has gotten very, like, mixed reception from people. Once again, I'm never sure how to fully feel about that, because, like, I don't know how general audiences feel about it, because when it comes to the review things, I don't know how much of that is just people, and how much of that is just, like, not legitimately, like, critics. I haven't looked on, like, a Rotten Tomatoes, because I typically don't let ratings and reviews affect me. I watch plenty of shows that people don't like, and I like, because that's just me. I don't get too caught up in that stuff. But I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'm excited for a season 2. I'm also excited for all the spin-offs, which is definitely going to be interesting. I think I remembered that, but it wasn't until like the very end when I was like, wait, you already have footage. I'm like, there's no way you started season 2 already. It's like, no, it's one of the spin-offs, Citadel Diana. Because, I mean, Citadel was like this international organization. So I'm assuming this is going to be moving up and down the timeline, just kind of like this show was. I'm wondering how they'll handle that, though. Will like, all of this be like at the same time all the Nadia and Mason stuff was happening? So will it be like, oh, this is like 10 years ago before like Citadel fell, but we're going to like follow different countries and maybe follow different characters and see where they are in the aftermath of Citadel's fall? Because there were other vials and stuff, so there's probably other Citadel agents that, I mean, they made it seem like Carter might have been the only one that was kind of left. They made it seem like that, but maybe there are other agents, and they didn't really get into that this season, because it's like, well, maybe that's a future season thing they'll cover, but also there's also all the spin-offs which take place in different countries. One of them they referenced was the Italian Alps, which I'm like, which is interesting, because I'm assuming that's going to tie into, because that mission on the train in the first episode, their last mission before Citadel fell, or well, Citadel was falling, was in the Italian Alps. So I'm like, there has to be, that would have to correlate in some shape or form. I don't know if that's going to be the Citadel Diana one or not, but there's that. There's one in Mexico. There's one in India. So that's definitely going to be interesting. Citadel Diana is going to be the first one, and it's coming out sometime next year. So I wonder, they're going to like, is it going to be like a every couple months type of thing of like, okay, you get one of the spinoffs and then you get one of the a new season of Citadel? I'm curious like how they're going to handle that rotation, or will it be like every other, or will it be like every other year? So we got Citadel season 1 now, we're getting Diana next year, and then like maybe 2025 we get season 2, or like I said, want to be like 6 months apart type of situation. I'm curious to see how they would handle that. But like I said, I'm excited to explore this universe more, other characters and other stories, while also continuing this story and see where this story and these characters going forward into season 2. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.